Hello, hello. My name's Tom Bergeron. I'm the editor of ROI-NJ. Welcome to a latest ROI event. Today's thought leadership panel is on family business, what you need to know. Appreciate everybody coming out today. We've got a nice tight room here, a lot of people, a lot of interest. We knew that this was going to be a great topic and there's plenty to talk about. So as I told people before, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce our panelists. We're going to give them a quick opening statement. I'll throw out a question. I got a list of 20 questions back here. I could be here all day. But you guys came here for a reason too, so we're hoping to get a lot of audience participation. We like to do our panels, we like to think of this as a backyard barbecue type situation or a business cocktail hour where it's just people talking. So our hope is to generate that this table's got a question and this table's got a question, and these people say they don't know what they're talking about. Here's what we should talk about. That's what we want. No fighting, no spitting, none of that. But we want to keep it fun. We want to keep it moving. We got a lot of things we can cover. You guys came here for a reason. We want to make sure that you get your ROI from being here. All right. So with that, I'm going to make a couple of quick introductions, and we're going to go across the room. So let's start with Jason Sobel of Sills Cummins.
I'm Jason Sobel. I practice in law firm of Sills, Cummins & Gross. We have a 35-person real estate group. We're based in Newark, but we do transactions all over the state and all over the country. I am primarily a transactional attorney, focusing on purchases and sales, leases from both the landlord and tenant side, and financing from both the lender and borrower side. I also style myself a development attorney, meaning whether we're ground-up development or a complete gut rehab and creating a new development on any site. But the reason I'm really here is because I'm the chair of our firm's FORE practice group. That's FORE, which stands for Family-Owned Real Estate. And that focuses on the underlying asset in most of your businesses. You're all here because you're family business people. But what you don't realize, and probably as Tom alluded to before, the takeaway or one of the main points that I would like to focus on is that what you don't realize is that the real estate underneath your business is possibly your most valuable asset, and it probably is going to drive what you may do today or what you may do in 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years.
Awesome. Jerry Schenker, KRS.
My name is Jerry Schenker. I'm a CPA partner at KRS in Paramus, New Jersey. We're about a 20-person firm, and we specialize in helping entrepreneurial businesses. We have long-term relationships. We listen to what the goals of our clients are, and we help them achieve those goals. I can tell a lot of success stories about people that came to me with a loose leaf binder business plan that sold their business for 10 or 50 or $100 million. We have a lot of those stories. But the story I'm most proud of, the client that was referred to us that was ready for bankruptcy, their bank canceled their loan, they called their loan, they didn't know what to do. We found them a hard money lender. We met with them every week to make sure we prepared a budget, met with them every week to make sure they were following the budget. And they eventually got rid of the hard money lender, got conventional financing, and now they're flourishing again. And that's the story I'm most proud of.
All right, next I'm going to go to George Lee, and a special thanks to Mass Mutual, who's our primary sponsor today. And Michael Vesuvio was going to give some opening notes, but I think he got called away on business, we'll say. But George is on the panel. We knew he was going to the panel. George, give us a little bit about yourself.
Great. Thank you, Tom. So my name is George Lee. I'm a VP with Mass Mutual. I've been in the financial services industry now for almost 26 years. Our firm, really, the group that I lead, focus on family business, closely held family business. There are challenges that a small business owner like yourself doesn't have the resources compared to a Fortune 500, right? Most of us that is in that space, the largest asset that we hold in our name is often our family business. So often we're so busy running the business, making sure the business is doing well, making sure that our employees are happy, making sure that we're expanding our marketplace and not left behind. But there's a key thing we often forget. What is our exit strategy? Who are we passing that business to, right? Jerry and I, we know each other, and one of the things that we often talk about is that the greatest pain and frustration for somebody like us is conveying this message to business owners like yourself to take action, right? You're successful for a reason. You take charge. But very often, advisors like us can't force you to take charge. So one of the reasons why we're up here today is to create awareness. Let's talk candidly. Who should you be leaving the business to? We all think we know informally who that successor will be. But I'm the guy that kind of challenge you and says, are you sure that's the right person, right? Is that son, is that daughter, is that nephew, right? Is that sibling? But often, what type of conflict does it eventually create? You know, one of the things we openly joke about is I have regular meetings and we have very candid conversation with some of our valued clients. And we always say, oh, we talked about this. And I'll tell Mr. Client, when did you talk about this? Over Christmas dinner, over Thanksgiving dinner. So
14 years ago.
14, exactly. So, and the key to it is, you know, we have an understanding. And a lot of that so-called understanding, because it's informal, right?
Well, let's start right there. I think that's a good opening question. There's not a person who owns a family business who doesn't get up every day and just, well, I know that this person, my son, my daughter, my nephew, this and that, is going to take over the next generation. And I've got them working there and I've shown them this and that. So we're all good, right? I mean, that's the general philosophy. But the number one thing when you have a family business is the assumption that someone in your family is going to take over. So let's talk about, I'm going to give each of you guys a shot on, you know, something where it should be more formal, things you need to talk about, figuring out, okay, well, I think it's going to be person A, but really maybe I should have thought about person B. Talk about in the early stages when you're planning, even if this is 10 years out, 15 years out, let's start with what should the family business owner be doing to set themselves up on this succession planning?
Okay. So one of the things that we always encourage successful owner to look at is you got to take the time and really evaluate what is your own exit strategy. Okay. There are three things, and Nadia and Arifa is out there with a great piece that Mass Mutual have created, and I bet I know what's on your mind. There are 5 things that business owner like yourself often focus on. First is income. If I give away the business to a family member or I sell it to a key employee, where's my income coming from? Right? That's the number one issue. That's why we delay this transaction, because we want to make sure that income's still there to support our family's lifestyle. 2, often business owner uses bank loans. How is that loan going to be paid off? Often we personally guarantee that loan. How do we get out of it? Right? Second thing that we look at is there transfer issues? Because a lot of times, right, depending on who we are transferring the shares of the corporation to, could cause a tax implication, right? These are overwhelming issues that prevent us to take action. So my advice has always been, speak to somebody like myself to understand your needs intimately and let me introduce to you an expert such as Jerry, right? That you create your golden triangle. What do I mean by a golden triangle? Your team of elite advisors. If you want to win a championship, you can't do it by yourself, right? We all have different skill sets, experience, and talent. Leverage that talent. Your team should consist of a great attorney that will draft the documentation, right? An accountant that can run the tax implication of some of the planning strategies that we're looking at, and somebody like myself that could be creative and give you really great solutions that's appropriate, okay, at that time when it's most important. Because a lot of our client thinks that planning is inadequate. Why is that inadequate? Because they think there's a one-time process. It's not. It's a continuous process. To do this well, you should really be looking at 5 to 10 years prior to you exiting the business.
So Jerry, when they bring you in, when you sit at the table with a family for the first time, I know you've got a checklist in your mind. Okay, let's talk about these tax issues. Boom, boom, boom. Let me know where you stand. Let me know what you've thought about. Let me see where you're at, because I know that these are the most important, and I got to bring you up to speed on all of those. Give us some examples.
Well,
of what
even
you've been talking
before
about.
we talk about tax issues, one of my specialties, or my main specialty, is business valuation. We try to figure out what the value of the business is. Often, business owners, especially business founders, are not realistic about the value of their businesses. They say, and I've had this conversation with so many clients, I started this business. It's worth a lot of money. My neighbors sold their business for $50 million. My business is worth a lot of money too. But at business value, it's all about cash flow and risk. The higher the cash flow and the lower the risk, the greater the value of the business. And someone that's making, a small business where the guy's making $100, $200, or $300,000, the main owner, all they own is a job. If the business isn't profitable, what a buyer of a business is going to pay for, whether it's the next generation or a third party, an unrelated third party, they're going to pay for the value of that business, the future cash flow, and they're going to evaluate the risk, whether or not that cash flow will be realized. The lower the risk, the greater the cash flow, the higher the business value. Once you establish a business value, then it's necessary to come up with an agreement, an understanding over Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner, or an unspoken understanding that someday Johnny's going to take over the business. That's not enough, because when the first generation wants to retire and needs money, becomes disabled, or dies, without a written document, there's undoubtedly going to be a dispute. No plan. Not having a written document is the same thing as having no plan. And no plan is a plan to have a court decide what's going to happen to your business. It really is.
And let me jump in there. So your agreements are, it's not just one agreement. You're going to have estates and trust planning. You may have trust for your future generations. You may have spousal trust. There's all different types of vehicles that I'm sure Jerry's familiar with, and we have, as I alluded to before, some of my specialists in my group, when we work in the 4 group, one of the key components is an estates and trusts specialist and an attorney in my firm that will help you with that. So those agreements are important. And one of the key aspects of one of those agreements is sort of a buy, sell, or a put call. Some of your family businesses, it may not just be your immediate family. There may be brothers. Then as it passes down, now you have first cousins or uncles, and other people are involved. Maybe some of the kids on one side are going to go into the business, but the kids on the other side are not. Now you have to realize, how do I deal with these assets? And in your partnership agreement or your LLC agreement or your corporation, there need to be some mechanisms to deal with passing on those assets. And you can separate the business from the real estate. And like I said, I typically focus on the real estate personally, so I'm very familiar with it. One of your keys is this buy-sell agreement. So we'll just focus on the real estate for a second, but if you own $1 million building and now let's say the next generation is taking over. One cousin's a doctor in California, the other cousin's staying in, and they're going to run the business. But the cousin in California says, look, that's half my building here. So one cousin says, well, the guy who's staying there says, oh no, you know what, it's my building, I'm going to stay here. It's only worth about $500,000, I'll give you $250,000. The doctor says, no way, I know this thing's worth $1 million. So we have this business valuation issue, but the way it works best is if you have this put-call scenario. So we'll talk about the cousin that's staying in the business and wants to steal it for $500,000. He'll say to the cousin that's in California, I'll buy it from you for $500,000. Or actually, you have to buy it from me for $500,000, is really the way it works. So the cousin's going to say, oh, you know what, that's a steal, I am going to buy it. So the cousin that's staying in the business has to really think about it, because he doesn't want to give it away to the other cousin for an undervalue. And it really keeps everybody honest. And if the cousin in California doesn't want to buy it for $500,000, then this cousin keeps it for $500,000, and he pays out the other cousin.
So I'm going to jump in. I'm going to say 2 things. First of all, we talked about questions, and I'm going to ask one more, and then I'm going to be looking to you guys. And number 2, as someone who has 5 kids, my only advice who knows nothing about family business is give it to your daughter. Trust me. In my family, it's not even close. Give it to your daughter. I'm trying to give everything to my daughter. Yeah, the boys, they just give them a video game. Give it to your daughter. All right, so one of the things that I loved in our pre-call when we talked about the real estate, so I just want to get in this real quickly, because I think this is something that I think people don't realize, is that you've started a family business, you have this plot of land, maybe it's been in for a couple of generations, and you never thought, hey, maybe I could move to another location because this area, which wasn't so big, suddenly there's a huge piece of real estate that I have money on that I didn't realize. I can transfer my business 10 miles down here, sell my land to somebody else for gobs of money. People don't seem to think about it. Is the time to do a real estate thing when you're turning it over, before? Real estate's always interesting.
Yeah, no, you should plan before. You always should plan before. And there's a number of different options. It also depends on what your goals are. Well, really, and I like to focus on 2 different types of situations and spread them out. There's the static situation where everything's good in your business, everything's good in your real estate, and there's really nothing that you need to do right away. There's nothing forcing you to do anything with your real estate. And in that case, you're really just worried about your financing, making sure that you're with the right lender. Maybe your business is growing and you need to find a lender that can really handle, you started out as a mom and pop, but now you're you're growing. And maybe that mom and pop relationship with the local bank that you had is not able to service you. So if you have to take a look at everything, you really have to make sure that you're dealing with the right lender and that the terms of your loan going further out, if you even have a loan, are correct. Now, you may also want to take financing out of your building. You may use that building as an asset to expand your business. And now you have 2 children coming in to the business, and you know what? It supported you and your family in the first generation well. But now you're going to be supporting 2 families. So maybe you use that real estate as a tool to get you to expand the business. And those are your static situations where nothing's happening. The more exciting topic to talk about is your fluid situation. So either your business is cramped in this building, you really need to expand. What do you do with it there? Or your building's underutilized. You have a 100,000 square foot warehouse, and you're losing 50,000 square feet of it. Do you sublease? Do you bring on you bring a neighbor into your building? Maybe you don't want to do that because you have sensitive business activity going on. So as Tom had said, maybe you move. And when you move, do you just sell the property? Or what we do in the 4 group is maybe we'll bring you a joint venture investor. You'll contribute your land to a joint venture. You'll turn your 1-level office building into a multi-story mixed-use project, which is more of what's going on now in New Jersey, and really, especially New Jersey, but across the country, but especially New Jersey because of our dense population, and there's really no land left. But you take that 1-story office building and turn it into maybe a 5-story building, ground floor retail, maybe some residential above. And now you're a joint venture partner with somebody who does this for a living, a developer that comes in. You have a 50% or a 30% or whatever it is, the value of your business that Jerry spoke about, and you contributed that. You don't even have to take cash out of your pocket, but if you wanted to, you could. And now you have an income stream coming in for generation and generation and generation. And you can move your business to another location that's more suitable, maybe a lot cheaper, and maybe that really fits your expense budget on real estate and also on your lease payments if you don't own it.
So look at that. For 1995, we've already made you millions right there. All right, questions. Don't make me call on people. Yes, sir. This is when I make the Phil Donahue Oprah joke and we see which generation.
Hi, good dialogue. My name is Jotin Keher. I'm with Wells Fargo, and as you know, we work with family businesses all the time in terms of promoters. So my question is around the concept of a family office. My background, I used to run a VC fund, and I've raised a lot of money for startups, biotechs, and stuff like that, right? So what are you seeing with established family businesses? Do they have a family office concept where they behave like a private equity firm and make investments into other assets? And how does that work with the trust issues and things like that? Is that a big deal in terms of wealth management for them, or do you not see that?
I personally see a lot of that. And again, it's run of the gamut. It all depends on your as you know, every family business, every family is different, let alone every family business. So it really depends on what's suitable for that business and that family. It's kind of a very general question. Am I seeing it? Yeah, we do see it, and we deal with it all the time. And that's really what people come to us with, because they're not sure how to deal with this. They don't know what vehicles to put into place to make sure that not only, like I said, that first generation is off and set up in retirement, but that the future generations can really take over and run it. But I'm sure that you guys have some...
I don't really see much of that.
Don't see much of it?
Most of
Okay.
my clients are family businesses that have been in the family for multiple generations, and they're focused on the success of that business. They're not diversified, which is a little bit of a problem, because when 90% of your wealth is in one asset, it could be a problem if the economy goes bad.
And I agree, Jerry. I see similar situation that a large majority of the family's asset is in that business. And the key issue often that a lot of our clients fail to realize is that besides the fact they don't diversify, the only other asset that they do diversify into, like what Jason had pointed out, is real estate. And there's really a great issue with that, because these are assets that continue to appreciate in value. When you're talking to somebody like us, we give you strategies, maybe looking at a freeze of these assets, right, to minimize future tax costs down the road. So, we actually don't see, I would actually like to see that the business owner actually diversify into other asset class.
Yes, miss.
Lorraine Kasperzak, Advantage Marketing Consulting Services, and I have a question for Jerry. Jerry, there was a recent court ruling on sales tax and Nexus. Can you comment on that as to how it affects family businesses and small businesses?
Well, that ruling, I think it was South Dakota or North Dakota versus Wayfair, that ruling reversed old law that where you'd have Nexus to be responsible for collecting sales tax. Now, mail order and internet retailers are responsible for collecting sales tax based on the location of their customer. And I think that's, I was talking to my father about it, who's an old man and is angry about everything. But I think that's going to put everyone on a level playing field because we have retail clients that complain. Even I'm guilty of it. I used to buy cameras from B&H Photo because they didn't charge sales tax. Then they opened the warehouse in New Jersey. They started charging sales tax. So now I go to Unique Photo in Fairfield because there's no difference. I mean, it puts everyone on the equal.
Neither of them are sponsors, by the way.
No. That was just an example. And neither one of them's a client. I wish they were. But it puts everyone on the equal playing field so the retailers can compete with the online vendors.
Yes, sir.
With the new tax laws, do you guys give any thought to recommending that family-owned businesses switch from subchapter S's to C Corps?
You know what? I'm really struggling with that now. Like I have a law firm, a very profitable law firm in New York, that we just went through the whole thing a couple of years ago of electing S because they're making a lot of money. They didn't want to pay, double tax. With C corporations, they're subject to double tax, especially on sale. They didn't want to pay double tax. So now even for personal service corporations, I know I'm talking in circles, the rate dropped to 21%. So the corporate tax rate dropped to 21%. So we're considering that for all of our clients. But if they're distributing most of their money, if most of the money's coming out of the corporation, we're leaving it as an S corporation or a pass-through entity. But if they're repaying a lot of debt, if they have non-deductible expenses such as penalties, life insurance, if they're reinvesting a lot of money in the business, we are converting them to C corporations so they can use those dollars at a 21% after tax rather than 37%.
So let me jump in and take the next one because we're seeing a lot of a second generation or a next generation in the audience. And I wanted to ask you guys, so again, we talk about the succession plan. At what point should you start talking about succession plan? At what point do you think it's age appropriate to say you don't want to go to your 5-year-old and say, hey, here's what the P&L statement looks like? But how do you bring them on to let them know that this is something, here's what you need to know? And I wish when I was 15, my dad had told me this so I could start preparing for 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. This is how you need to start developing so you will be ready to take over when the time has come. Anybody jump in?
Well, I think Tom does a great question. One of the things that we see very often is that, business owners, their children, their relatives, their loved ones assume. And assumption will kill you, right? And one of the leading problem really is that the lifestyle that the parents often generate through the business, right, is very different than the work that's involved in running the business. It's an illusion, right? Children see the byproduct, the fruit of what the parents does, right? But often they don't see the pain, the frustration, right? The endless sleeping nights that they have to go through to get there, right? And we as parents, and I do the same thing, I want to shield my children from those pains and frustrations. But am I actually doing the right thing? So very often I actually encourage my clients to get your kids involved in the business at an early stage. Why do you want them to intern for somebody else when they don't truly understand what you do, right? We often think that I make a great living. Why don't you want what I created? But you know what? They see all the negative aspect when you come home with all the headaches, frustration. They don't want to deal with that headache, right? And at the same time, we look at our children that they're all special. But are they really? Are they going to be that key person that takes care of that business and propel it to a different level? Do they have the talent? Do they have the capability of taking the business to the next level? And this is the biggest frustration we have as advisors, because the assumption has always been made, I have my heir. And very often, the children's afraid to voice that opinion. Mom, Dad, I really don't want to do this, right? And they got very, very disappointed. And that conversation isn't taking place 10, 15, 20 years ahead of time, it's very often that conversation come about because a life event happens. Mom and dad got sick. There's a sudden death in the family, right? There are liquidity issues. Do we sell the business? Who do we sell it to? Then the whole context of this conversation really become one that needs to be resolved with attorneys, right? It gets very costly. Instead, all these things could have been prevented by just having a simple conversation, taking that simple conversation to a team of advisors that can help you structure a well thought out plan.
All right, more from the room. Yes, sir.
So my question is, you guys have been talking a lot about the older person and the route they'll take to leave it to the heir. But what if you're part of a large family and the younger generation now has ideas for the properties, not so much the business, but the properties? Well, we can call it business property. Older folks have their ideas. At what point do we come see you? Who do we see first? How do you guys handle that? I have 10 properties. My aunt wants to do this, my mom wants to do that, my cousin wants to do that. But uncle's 98, so the decision's coming soon. How do you guys handle that situation? Outside of asking me to get them all to your office.
Want me to take that? Yeah. So look, I see that all the time. That's what the 4 group's really all about. It's bringing this family together, and it is coming to the office, but it's because we have this multidisciplinary approach where we can we have to figure out what the goals are of the family. Like you said, maybe everybody has a different goal. So maybe some people want to exit, and we figure out a way to do that. Maybe some people want to stay in with their other family members to either expand the business or expand the real estate portfolio. So there's a way to craft agreements, and as we talked about before, the agreements really are everything. You want to put those agreements in place now, so that whether, just going back to what you were saying before, whether you're passing it generationally to your next generation, or to a key employee, or to a third party that comes in, if you have those agreements in place now, you'll be all set up no matter what happens. You can have contingencies in those agreements for whatever you may need, and you just really want to have it in place so that you're not taken by surprise.
Can you imagine if this is the most important part of the hour right here? and you got your tape recorder and it comes in. I missed it all. The patio was clean.
But I'll just speak up. So then you do have those key provisions in place, so that no matter what the situation is, and if God forbid a sudden death befalls upon your family and the business owner, you're prepared, you're ready to take that next step. But back to what you were talking about. So we have this multidisciplinary approach in the 4 group, where it consists of an attorney, your trusted advisors that we were talking about before, including a property management group that helps us. So they're going to help us with whether it be how can we maximize the value of this property or another property that you may be interested in buying. But like you said, your business owns a bunch of different properties. What are we going to take on? Each site is unique. So how are we going to treat each specific site, and what's the best way to handle that? Maybe the business should be located on one. Maybe this is the best site for to sell to a REIT and just get out, because we really don't see the future of it. And maybe we use that cash from this one to redevelop the other one. It's all depending on what the nature of the surrounding area is, and really what kind of income are you looking for. We can go grand scale, and we bring in, like I said, development partners, maybe even a REIT, to come in and joint venture with you and turn your small project into something large, or we can get you out completely. There's another really interesting thing that's just happening now in the new tax laws, and it's called opportunity zones. And I don't know if some of you have heard this or not. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but it's kind of like a 1031 exchange, and I'm sure you guys can speak to that a little bit as well. But when you sell real estate, it's a taxable event. But I'm sure you've all heard, most of you have heard of 1031 exchanges, where you defer your gain on the tax until, and you're able to, if you invest it into another piece of property, and you can defer it to some later date. Well, the opportunity zones is a really new and very exciting piece of the tax legislation, and it's really just coming out now. We're a little bit in front of it, but we still don't know all the details of it. And what that is kind of like a 1031 on steroids. And I say that because what it does is not only does it defer the gain from your sale of real estate that you accomplish now, but if you hold on to an investment And the investment must be made in what's called an opportunity zone. These are depressed areas throughout the country. And they're not necessarily fully depressed. Look, there's Red Bank, New Jersey is one. The entire country of Puerto Rico is supposed to be one. And we have these tracks all listed, and you can, we have a blog for my firm, you can check it out. And you can see all the different areas that are considered opportunity zones. But if you take your money, the gain from your sale of your property, and you invest it into an opportunity fund, excuse me, and the opportunity fund is the fund that invests in the properties in the opportunity zones. That money, not only is the gain deferred, but if you hold on to that investment for 10 years, the gain is completely wiped out tax-free. So it's these types of tools that when you go to trusted advisors, they're aware of these things, and they can help you not only, save yourself taxes now, but potentially save your children and future generations taxes and others, other sources of income, and really, help you out there.
I'd like to make a comment. We have a lot of situations, or we've seen situations that you describe where there's 10 or 15 or 20 pieces of real estate and multiple beneficiaries with different goals. And what we'll do is we'll come up with a plan where the people that want to stay in the real estate stay in. Some properties are sold to raise cash for the ones that want to get out, or the existing properties are refinanced. So the ones that want to exit with cash can do so either through financing or sale of some of the properties. And the ones that want to keep owning the real estate can do that.
Thank you. So in the case of setting up a family business with the second generation as the primary developer, have you guys seen really great success in terms of setting up an LLC, in terms of having an easily manageable and amendable operating agreement between the child, subsidiary, and their parents, which are guiding them along the way?
If you want to speak to it, the LLC is the most malleable, shapeable type of business organization, I guess, that you can really use, because the operating agreement can be set up however you want. It has all the benefits of you could be taxed as a corporation or a partnership, and you can set it up however you want. We can have our buy-sell agreements. We can have our put calls in there. So we use LLCs for small family business, and we use them for very large business too. I think that is the best way to do it. But you have to really make sure that you have the right provisions in. And the great thing about it is it can always be amended. So what you set up now, it's, like we said, it's not something you just stick in the drawer and you don't look at it again. This is something that when you meet with your trusted advisors, you take a survey and you kind of look and say, where are you headed, and is this agreement really fitting the needs that you have, the goals that you have for the future? If not, let's amend it now. But yeah, that is the best tool for sure.
Hi. My question is built on this gentleman's with the properties. My question is, have you used or are you familiar with the 1031 DST structure for, let's say, somebody who's looking to get out but doesn't want to pay the tax but doesn't want to be involved in management of a property?
Yeah, so our 4 group, and that's not my area of expertise. I know what I know and I don't know what I don't know. But we do use the Delaware Statutory Trust often. For sure. It depends on other services, but that is definitely a good vehicle to use. And that's why that's why I said my 4 group is multidisciplinary, because I'm more of the transactional guy, but we do have also wealth advisors that we bring in, financial planners that help set up exactly those types of vehicles along with the trust in the estates. So we're bringing in all the different tools to make sure that your group of trusted advisors is sending you on the right path.
Yes, sir.
Alan Crowgiver from Greenbelt Road. I do a lot of corporate split ups, and I know Jared well, and I'd like to ask this question of all of you, because I think it's important. It's great when you get willing people to come in and do agreements, and they're intellectual enough to think about all that stuff and farsighted enough. That's about, I'd say, 4% of the people that you see. So what do you do? Typically, there are intransigent partners, 50% partners or equal partners, and one is productive and one isn't. That's always the scenario that I see. What do you do to get them to resolve their differences before protracted litigation? And I do protracted litigation, so I like that. But generally, we have a lot of clients that come in and we want to help them. How do you persuade them to think about a buyout? And do you think about mediation? Because I'm also a mediator, and I think it's not used a lot, but it would really be a very effective tool in the the context of acrimony before litigation, years before litigation. So what do you guys do?
I send them to you.
Yeah.
Good
I mean,
answer.
you must face it every day.
Well, we try to get them to talk. In the tax courts, there's this concept called hot tubbing, where the parties meet and the attorneys aren't allowed to speak, and they try and negotiate and come out with a reasonable solution. I mean, we try to convince them to be reasonable. You know, the person that's not productive, the person that's not working, is probably not interested in the business, and they might be just as happy with a reasonable payment over a term of years. Any comments?
Well, like we see this very often, and this is actually a very simple solution. We just don't like to talk about it. And Jason addressed the buy-sell, right? What is really a buy-sell? Buy-sell, most people kind of know what it is, but nobody really truly understands it, right? Do I just buy the share? Is it cross-purchase? Is it an entity purchase? Because the strategies that you should be implementing on your buy-sell agreement leads to a lot of tax implications. I mean, Jerry can talk about that. And we have office attorneys, CPAs, over a home office. All they do is run these analysis for our clients. But the issue often come up is when money is involved, right? So if you have a good buy-sell agreement settled from the get-go, and you actually fund the agreement, and that's when often 90% of the time it goes wrong, there's no funding vehicle. Why? Because we just started a business. We have a very small amount of liquidity that we can leverage to fund these type of issues and agreements. And they kind of left it alone. We get there when we get there. And when a plan hasn't been established from day one with the exit strategy in mind, and that exit strategy needs to be practical, that's when litigation, misunderstandings, conflict come across.
All right, so let's talk about the exit strategy. You only have boys. They're all lazy. You don't have a daughter to give your business to, right? The boys, we all see where that's going. So when do you start thinking and saying, look, these knuckleheads are never going to run. I got Tommy Boy here. It's not going to work. How soon in advance do you start doing it? What are the necessary steps? I mean, if someone comes to say, look, my kids don't want to take over and I want to go to Bermuda next month, that's too late in the game. When does the process start where you're saying, we got a family business, we know there's not going to be a next generation, what do I need to set up and how far in advance do I need to start talking about it?
I say 5 years, and during that 5 years, you clean up the business, you clean up the balance sheet, you make sure the books are perfect. You want books, when you sell your business, especially to private equity, you want books that speak for themselves because they're asking questions you can't even dream of. And you set a budget, you set a plan, you meet with your team of advisors on a quarterly basis to make sure you're adhering to that plan, and you build up the business value by increasing cash flow. Maybe the owner doesn't have to drive a Ferrari, and maybe everybody with the same last name doesn't, even if they don't show up for work, doesn't have to be on the payroll. You laugh, but that's
in New Jersey,
world.
really? You see
Yeah. And you reduce your risk. You diversify your customer base. You increase your management depth. You diversify suppliers. You increase the value of the business, so when it's ready to be sold in 5 years, you're ready to go. So whatever due diligence the buyer's doing. I'm involved in the sale of a healthcare business in Brooklyn now, and where they don't even have any books. They have like a part-time bookkeeper, and the due diligence. This is a private buyer. It's not even a private equity fund. They give us a 10-page single-space due diligence list. They want everything. I mean, there's no way we're going to be able to produce this information. Or if we do, it's going to cost them like a lot of money in accounting fees, which nobody likes to pay.
Yes, sir.
How often should you have visits out?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe informally, once a year, every other year. You don't need a formal report. You don't need a 75-page business valuation report. I can do a business valuation on a spreadsheet, especially if I've done it before, and we can meet and discuss it. I think you only need a business valuation when you have a shareholders agreement, when you execute a shareholders agreement, so everybody knows where they stand. And on the, when you're getting ready for sale or on the death or withdrawal of an owner.
We actually provide our clients a snapshot of what your business is worth without going into great expense. We have a sample of that plan outside on the table. You can look at it. As over here at Mass Mutual, we do it in-house, free of charge. That gives you a free, really good synopsis of what the value of my business is. From that, you should be looking at it and make two decisions from that evaluation. If I'm going to give this business to a family member and I'm looking to gift it, bestow it, right? Maybe I don't want the value of my business to be so high. Possible estate tax issue, perhaps. But like what Jerry has mentioned, if I want to sell it to third party, then the strategy change, right? So really start with the asset, what the value truly is, and what I want to do with it. So we have a sample of that report out on the table. And if you're interested, let us know. My staff can sit down and gather 3 years tax returns and help you look at it practically and say, what should be my next step?
All right, so let's turn to estate and gift planning as a potential way to transfer the business. Let's talk about the benefits and the pros and cons of that and what you need to be looking for.
Well, for estate and gift planning, contrary to selling to a third party, you want the value of the business to be low because you want to maximize your ability to give gifts on a tax-free basis. There are other techniques, family partnerships, trust techniques to take larger discounts. There's discounts when you value a business. There's discounts for lack of marketability, discounts for lack of control. So in the estate and gift scenario, we try to apply those approaches to minimize the value of the interest being gifted. And we don't advise our clients to gift a controlling interest or 50% or more at the same time. We advise our clients to gift or transfer a minority interest because a minority interest, 10% of a business is worth less than 10% of the total value of the business. It's worth 6% of the total value of the business. And that 4% gap is transferred, if we can do it the right way, and it passes IRS scrutiny, it's transferred free of estate and gift tax.
Yes, sir.
So where our investment bank is spinning out of business, which I'm going to lead and say about half the company, I've gotten advice that in my stake, day one, because very low valuation, I should give large pieces of that to the children to avoid, future estate issues or taxation issues. What's your advice on that approach versus just putting my stake into the family trust?
My advice is that that's a good idea. If, I don't know what form of entity this business is. Sometimes you don't want the children to have unlimited rights. Maybe you have voting shares and non-voting shares. But my advice is it's a good idea.
Yeah, it really depends on the end goal in mind. What are you really trying to do, right? Are there income that you want to generate from the shares, right? Is it for possible tax planning? So these are really the situation that you should be looking at. Some of the things we have successfully used is that we discount your share value in a minority stake, especially if lack of control. IRS allow, Jerry knows better this than I do, up to 35% on the discounting ratio. So these are strategies that you should be talking to your advisors about.
All right, so let's talk about end game. I have down on my sheet, business owner's life after sale, retirement income plan. I think that would appeal to a lot of people in the room. How do we set that up to make sure that in the next generation, you're still being taken care of? Not that our kids would turn on us, but in theory.
Well, we see this every day. We always encourage our client, your type A personality, you're successful for a reason, be proactive, right? A good plan is really essential, right? Our group focus predominantly on financial planning. Often we meet the client, we focus on personal planning first. And once we identify, your statement of financial positions, right? Those are the goods. We'll tell you what are the bads. You got to be proactive, right? You got to utilize strategies from the beginning as early as possible, right? Mass Mutual, we're known for our life insurance products. We love it. It's the Swiss Army knife when it comes to financial planning. It covers so many issues that business owners, family members fail to realize. And the younger you do this, the bigger the rewards, right? One of the great funding vehicles that we look at all the time when it comes to a buy-sell agreement is actually life insurance. But that gets complicated, right? When you're talking to an individual that purely just wants to sell you a life insurance policy and don't understand the intricacies, involved, you get into very big tax situations, right? How many of us have life insurance in this room? Probably half, right? So do you own it personally? Or is it owned through an island? That has huge tax implications. But when you're dealing with a product salesperson versus a professional to understand the tools and implication of these strategies, it could be life-changing. Number two, who's concerned about long-term care, especially in retirement? A lot of us, right? But why are we not being proactive? Because believe it or not, long-term care insurance is fully tax deductible. It's constituted as health insurance. The courts have made that ruling, right? And if you could pass through that protection through the business, setting yourself up for that possible illness or life event, have a bucket of cash that kind of sustain your lifestyle or your care. How come you're not doing it? Right? There's so many other components that a business owner should be proactively thinking about, right? All you guys are really worrying about is the chicken that's laying the golden egg. But a lot of the times what the chicken is actually doing and eating, we forget. So the value of a good advisor is somebody that can have these open-ended discussion. Identify the problems that you don't see and come up with simple solutions. Because if the solution isn't simple, most likely you're not going to do it.
All right, well, listen, one thing we also do at ROI is we're very respectful of your time. So we thank you guys. That was a great discussion. I appreciate you kept the profanity to a minimum. That was good. So what we're going to do here, we're going to do a lightning round. I'm going to give each panelist a chance to say one more thing, one point they want to make. It's 9:30. We know you guys have places to go, and since you own the business, you can't take a slide. I mean, you're the boss. But if you want to stick around, we encourage people to do so. We're going to be here for a while. Chat with the panelists, chat amongst yourselves. I don't know if the food is still out. Do what you like to do. But we appreciate you doing this, and we're going to go down the line and give these guys one final comment.
I guess for me, it's just don't forget about that potentially extremely valuable part of your business, which is your real estate. And there's a way to use it to your advantage. So there's a million different ways to use it to your advantage, and you really have to be thinking about that as much as you're thinking about your business and the way it's run, is thinking about its real estate and its location.
For me, it's about monetizing the asset, coming with a plan, a written plan to transfer the asset, whether it's to family members or to an outside party, and also a financial plan, a budget that's monitored on a monthly or quarterly basis to make sure that the business is performing as it should, and if it's not, why it isn't and what can be done about it.
I would just encourage everybody in the room that if you don't have a trust advisor, seek one out. A solo advisor isn't sufficient. You really should be looking at a team of advisors, guiding you, coaching you through this entire process. It's a long-term process, okay? The success and failure really depends on you because you are the engine that drives what comes out. One of the things that, Jerry and I have structured for you guys as I thank you is we are actually going to be holding a workshop for business owners like yourself, some of your friends or families or colleagues that might be interested. We'll be doing 2 sessions, session 1 and session 2. The details and invitation is out on the table. It's going to be the next couple weeks. One is bright and early at 8 a.m. in my Bridgewater office. And another one is actually going to be 7 o'clock at night out of my Sea Caucus office. So I'm going to have a home office attorney along with Jerry and myself talk to you about some of the strategies that you might not have heard of. So then we could go much deeper into detail and address some of your individual concerns. Okay? So thanks again for being here.
And I want to thank ROI for hosting this event.
Exactly.
All right, good stuff. You're excused.